Hello, and welcome to today's roundtable on security for AV pros. We're here to talk about the emerging opportunity for AV integrators and contractors around security, both physical security and network security. And our panel is going to get into the upselling, integration, and support opportunities around security, and also discuss some resources to help you get started or to take your next steps in this area. So today's discussion is presented by Sound Video Contractor and includes experts from ADI, Atlas IED, and TD SYNNEX. My name is Scott Becker, and I'm here to handle some housekeeping details and introduce your main moderator, and then I'll be stepping aside to listen with the rest of you to this esteemed panel of experts. Now, before we get to today's timely discussion, let's go through those housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of the session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing with the platform. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, there's a handout section in your webinar control panel, and in there you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to the links where you can learn more about ADI, Atlas IED, and TD SYNNEX. There's also a pointer to the Sound Video Contractor website there. So I encourage you to access those resources now and throughout the presentation, and feel free to share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third and finally, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize, but the official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the links with the details there. Okay, and with that, let's get to today's timely discussion. So
Hi,
it's
everyone.
my pleasure. Hey, Cynthia. It's
Hi,
my pleasure
Hi.
to introduce Cynthia Wisehart, who's editor of Sound Video Contractor. Cynthia, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for introducing, Scott. And thanks, everybody, for coming. This was an important topic that we wanted to talk about. It's been a part of AV for a long time, but not necessarily as publicly understood as we think is important now. And I'd like to thank you all for trying to educate yourself about the opportunities here, and also remind you that this is not just AV, this is also a service that is very important for your customers. And by stepping up and becoming more expert in this subject, you're actually really performing a service for the community, because we really need expertise in this area. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't true, but we all know that security will only become more important as time goes on, both physical and cybersecurity. So I appreciate you all taking the time to be here and take advantage of this group of experts that we've brought together today. So yeah, I'm going to bring everybody.
Yep, I'll get out of the way and bring everybody on. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. So as they're joining, we have with us today Cynthia Mena from ADI, Michael Pievler from Atlas IED, and Sean Hackett from TD SYNNEX. And I'm just going to let each person introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their experience in security. So Cynthia, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Cynthia. And thanks for having us today. This is really exciting and certainly a topic near and dear to my heart. Cynthia Mena, by virtue of introduction, VP and GM of AV at ADI Global. ADI is a leading distributor of security solutions and also has a strong discipline in the AV practice as well. We certainly see a lot of crossover. We, of course, serve the AV first customers, but also what we would call the AV second. So we're seeing a lot more convergence of technology and continue to see that. I've been with ADI for a decade. And really the convergence of the technologies and the applications merging into one another. I know that we hear a lot about convergence. I think convergence has happened. Everything's on the network. So we certainly are at a place where having the ability to talk to your security system, your AV system, your access control system, all tied into your back-end network capabilities is extremely important. And understanding that customers really want to have one source of the truth. They want to have the capability to see all the technology on a single platform as well and really tie it all together. So again, topic near and dear to my heart, given my background, given the company that I come from. I'm excited to enjoy the session with everyone today. So thanks again for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. And then Michael, Atlas IED, can you please just say a few words about yourself and your role?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Michael Peevler. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Atlas IED. I've been in the AV industry for about 25 years. When I came to Atlas IED 5.5 years ago, I was really surprised to discover how much activity was already going on in the security side. And really, for the last 5.5 years, it's been a pretty major learning curve for me coming in. Today, it's a huge part of our business. It makes up about 50% of our revenue today. It comes out of the security side of the world. So while everybody knows us as being an audio company, audio plays a major role in the world of security. And we partnered with a number of companies. ADI happens to be our largest customer. We do a ton of work with Cynthia and her team across the country. And we've really had to learn to focus being part of an ecosystem. But it's been really rewarding and equally frustrating at the same time, because I've seen a lot of friends who I've known on the AV side for 20 plus years who are trying to grow their business, and they're struggling to know what to do. And I feel like we're holding the golden egg and we're telling them, please come over here. And it's been a struggle to get them to come. So I'm excited to have be a part of this conversation and share some of what we've learned and what we've seen as a person that, again, was really kind of raised in the industry. So
thanks, Michael. Sean, why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself too, and then we'll get into the questions.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you for everyone that's joined the webinar today. I'm Sean. I'm the Business Development Executive for TD SYNNEX, specializing in physical security. TD SYNNEX is one of the largest IT distributors in the world, with a big focus on the AV space, as well as physical security and IT, all things IT. So as we talk about some things in the cybersecurity here, we'll be highlighting a lot of those different business units within TD SYNNEX.
Great, thanks so much. So listen, you guys have given some really good context here, so I think we'll just jump into some of the specifics around this. For the audience, we are going to talk about both physical and cybersecurity. And in fact, there's a certain amount of overlap because so much security ends up on the network anyway. But for the purposes of the conversation, we're just going to silo out for a minute and just talk a little bit about what's going on in physical security. So let me start with you, Michael. You mentioned the audio playing such a big role in security. Do you feel like the key opportunities for physical security are audio mass notification related, surveillance related, a little bit of both? What are the products and services that are in demand right now?
Yeah, so certainly, what I've seen in my exposure is I walked into a security world, and I remember walking ISC West the first time and just being overwhelmed by how much video-centric solutions outside of physical security, like access locks and restricted access and things like that. And I remember seeing it all and not seeing a lot of audio. And really, through the time that we've been working in the space, we've seen that there's a handful of audio providers that are selling and really active in the space, and yet there's a massive opportunity in this space as well for audio. So to me, it's a natural place for an AV integrator who has experience to jump. I maybe kind of jump into the end of the story here, but it's always I've always struggled because we'll be talking to working with a customer, and we'll talk to the AV person, and as soon as you say mass communication, they go, sounds like security to me. And as soon as the security guy looks at it, he goes, wait, it's got a microphone and amplifiers and speakers. Oh, that sounds like audio and video to me. So it must be the AV guy. And it's a struggle sometimes to get someone to kind of step into that role and fill the need that the customer has. And so it's interesting to me that mass notification really looks like a paging system with a better command center for communication into multiple platforms. And yet a lot of AV dealers tend to be scared of that.
Yes, it's a good point, and we'll get into that a little bit later about some of the things that are an obstacle, concern about liability or knowledge and how you guys support people like that. But let's do a little bit more to set the scene before we get to that. So Cynthia, we've had with COVID, we had a, supply chain nightmare, as we all well know. Are there any issues around physical security right now that go with product availability or interoperability and things like that? Where do you see the product landscape for the support of?
From an availability and from a supply chain perspective, I think, both on the security side and the security side, from my perspective, was not as impacted as the AV space was. We saw that supply chain, there were some challenges here or there, but it was relatively healthy. In reverse, though, we did see some impact on the AV side because of supply chain and challenges from an allocation perspective. What I would say is now we're in a much healthier place. I think we're, as we call it, the new normal, if you will. We had some surge last year on the AV side because product was coming in and things were getting kind of right-sized. And now I think that we're kind of back to a normalized supply chain from an availability perspective. So healthy on both fronts. I think everyone on this call, myself, and Michael, et cetera, would agree. We're here. We've got product to sell, but also very happy to support, both the security and AV side of the business.
Thank you. And what about interoperability? We're working on that a lot in AV. Does the security ecosystem have the same issues of interoperability that we see across the board, or are there things that are unique to that situation?
So I think, the unique side to the security space is anything that requires licensing, but from an interoperability and things talking to each other, I think, and I would hope my counterparts would agree, we're seeing a lot more, open platforms, right? So that the desire to keep everything so closed to the vest from a product perspective, I think has lessened and continues. I think we continue to understand that open operability and open platforms, help our customers, B, help ease the design integration of things. So I think we are seeing a lot more interoperability, and I think we're continuing to see, when you look at the applications, and you asked this to Michael earlier, the applications of the merging of security and AV continues to grow, and we didn't talk about digital signage. Talked a little bit about mass notification, but think about digital signage for a mass notification platform, right? So not only do you need to hear what's going on in a building or facility, but if I'm someone who's deaf, perhaps for hearing impaired, I need to also see instructions, and you can do that through applications like digital signage as well.
Yes, on the network. So, Sean, just let me kick to you. Are you seeing it more software driven than we've seen in the past? Picking up on that, is there a strong interaction with IT, or does this tend to silo the security side of it? How important are IP endpoints? And so, you mentioned the cybersecurity side of it. Give us a little sense of how physical and software interacts, automation. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so cybersecurity is obviously at the forefront of anything that resides on a large network or even a small network. The vulnerabilities for ransomware, what we've seen kind of in the past is that the physical security is a bit siloed because although it's used on a day-to-day basis, for the most part, it's not something that's always in front of the IT department, let's say. So for video surveillance, for example, they only look at it after an incident has happened a lot of the times. Well, that's a lot changing with AI and real-time notifications in the video surveillance world, and the layered approach of all the equipment that goes along with physical security, from access control to many other specialty systems that are put in public spaces to protect property and life, for that matter. Those opportunities will continue to evolve on the network, right? So the vulnerabilities there for people to hack into a, let's say, camera, right? And then kind of sniff around the rest of the network. Well, that's where cybersecurity, I guess, is going to be at the forefront of all that. So just making sure that you're securing your devices as you put them onto the networks. And that's part of the IT directors, I guess, and network administrators' tasks.
So let's just take a minute to say, if someone, this is for all three of you, but if someone is interested in getting into security, is the priority that they understand the hardware and the product opportunities, or is it that they understand how to make those endpoints secure on a network, or both? Let's hear from Michael on that first.
I mean, I think it's both. It ultimately depends on your end customer. A lot of times we're doing work within the infrastructure of an IT department, and they've got parameters and rules in place. So equipment needs to meet certain standards, but you're operating within their firewall, within their levels of protection. And so you don't have to be the IT person. You have to deal with products that are IT compatible. Right, and that means that their products have the built-in security and layers of security that are needed. So, I think it's more important to understand. Ultimately, for most of the time, the integrator is judged by the quality of the installation and the performance of the product, and all of us on the AV side and on the security side are working with the IT end users. With those departments and every install we're doing, whether it's conference rooms and meeting rooms or whether it's mass notification, we're all talking to the IT people as part of that conversation and trying to operate within their rules. And as a manufacturer, we're all building product understanding that that's the standard we have to build to today.
Okay, Cynthia, is there something you wanted to add to that?
So I think whether you're on the security side or the AV side, I mean, there are, and I see a handful of questions around cybersecurity as it relates to AV. I think it's the actions that you take are very common, whether you're in the AV side or the security side, right? You're making sure that you are doing regular firmware updates and software updates, having firewalls in place. On the AV side of things, it can be as simple as making sure that you're locking down, HDMI ports or USB ports. Making sure that people can't go in and plug their own USB devices into, televisions and conference rooms and so forth, where there's, information being stored. So I think that really some of the preventive measures is very similar, whether you're in the AV space or the security space.
That's a really good point. These are best practices that are probably becoming more widespread, whether people are supporting a security infrastructure or just trying to keep a conferencing infrastructure from being hacked. Or Sean, when people go to try to engage their customer, what are the obstacles people may feel? Like, let's say you're an integrator trying to do more for your customer around security or cybersecurity issues. What holds people back in your experience from thinking they have a place at that table?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing is just the overwhelming feeling of where to get started. And the resources that we have through TD Synex can help them get started with the opportunities, the questions to ask. I feel that some of the integrators outside of the physical security space, in that overwhelming feeling, don't always know the questions to ask, right? You don't know what you don't know until you don't know it, right?
So is there, that's actually really good point. So do any of you offer trainings, or is there a need to kind of lay out these basic questions for people? Or do you find that if people will just come to you, that you can engage in real time around the system that they're working on? Let me ask that back to Michael.
Yeah, the answer is all of those things. I mean, yes, we offer training. We partner with companies like these folks that have great organizations that can help train and do work with people, and obviously it's part that all of us have built in the efforts to grow our business. And as we see this convergence happening anyway. It would be remiss to say we don't see security people and telephony people getting into AV, right? And so this is happening both directions, right? We just like to see more AV people come into security because we see the other way a lot more. I think you guys may or may not agree, but that's what my experience has seen. But yes, we offer training and we have standard classes that are always available. We're also out talking to a lot of these dealers and sharing that, hey, look, we got a lot of people making a lot of money doing this and they're making a difference. And if your customers are looking for these kind of solutions that you're already working with, we'll be here to support you and we can get you trained and get you connected. And I don't think we're all that unique as a manufacturer. I think most manufacturers are doing the same kind of thing, having the same kind of conversations and offering the same kind of tools.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important point. And I also want to just make sure everybody heard you say that if we don't take the opportunity, somebody else will, because there's other vendors, just like there were with low voltage, where people have the ear of their customers and they are also looking for an opportunity to expand their business. So I think that's partly why we're encouraging this as a new area. So Cynthia, for those people who are, as Sean pointed out, just kind of at the beginning of maybe not knowing where to start, if they come to ADI, how does that work?
So a few things, and I think like the three of us on the call, we offer a tremendous amount of support, and I think that's really important for everyone that's on this call that's interested in security. Is you're not in this alone. And I would really recommend, I always suggest a crawl, walk, run approach, is understanding the technology first, right? Understand the resources that are out there. We've got field sales teams, design teams. Certainly our supplier partners are critical, and they have a tremendous amount of support that they can offer, whether it's by means of training, design, site walkthroughs, etc. So I think it's really understanding the tools and resources first. Don't experiment with security or any new category for that matter with your biggest customer and their biggest project. Identify some opportunities that are maybe low-hanging fruit. And I think when you think about it, and what we would all, I think, agree on as well, is the cost of acquiring a new customer is high. The cost of getting deeper and wider with a customer is much easier. So finding ways to help them grow and really being a good partner. So if you do have if you're on this call, obviously the assumption is that you do a lot more AV than you do security. But let us help you. You have the resources. We want to help you grow and partner with you to identify those opportunities, to help you get trained, to point you in the right direction, to help you partner, to get deeper and wider with your end users and your customers as well. So again, my advice, crawl, walk, run. There's a tremendous amount of support if you come to an ADI, whether it's on-site trainings, whether it's through our field sales teams, our systems group, our technical design resources. There's a tremendous amount of support behind you. The other great product is access to a wide variety of brands and solutions. So being able to help point you in the direction of the right product, the right application is also really important. Leading into a coffee shop with a very high-end security system and very high capability products is probably the wrong way to go, right? You're going to outprice yourself in that project. Let us help you, guide you on the right product, the right application. The other thing I would say around people getting into security is you got to kind of peel the onion back on what part you're going to get involved in, right? There's clearly crossover with mass notification, signage. But if you're looking at getting into things like true physical security where there's licensing requirements, you've got to understand that up front. Whereas with video surveillance and access control, those requirements don't exist. So if you do walk into opportunities where perhaps it requires more of a licensed application, which is really monitoring systems, we can certainly either partner you with someone or tell you the steps as to how you get licensed. And those requirements vary by city, state, county across the U.S.
Yes, of course, code plays a huge role, and so does licensing. So it's good you pointed that out. So my takeaway is kind of that there may be opportunities that are a little smaller scale as a way to get started and comfortable without feeling like you're sticking your neck out into an area where there is code and liability concerns, where you can still start small. So that is a very good point. Sean, over at TD SYNNEX, if someone comes to you who needs a gateway into this, how does that work with you guys?
Yes, so we see this all the time as a crossover, whether it's in the IT or AV space. So we do have the resources available, as Cynthia said, that are here to stand behind you and help select the product. I'm part of that team. So we have a whole pre-sales, field sales for helping design, doing site walks, the product management side of things, and the inside sales team. They're all versed and trained to be able to communicate those needs for the customer.
Great. And let's turn it around the other way for a second for our integrators. What do they already know that they may not realize is super valuable for stepping into this space? I'll come back to you, Michael.
Yeah, again, we'll go back. We can start with a couple of things. Conceptually, they understand project management. They understand, integration. They've been doing integration of multiple systems, getting things to talk to each other, whether it's, through something like an API to talk over the network, and we see this all the time, that somebody will build a really sophisticated API, and we'll go out on the job site and go, hey, how did you connect? And the installer will go, we just ran a contact closure wire and it did everything. I mean, and AV guys are doing that too, right? They're doing the exact same thing. So they've got a lot of skill and understanding. They just need to, find a way. And I think Cynthia, did a great job of kind of describing it. You got to come in and start learning to speak the language. You've got to understand that there's going to be different rules. Some things are going to be the same and just have a different name, or maybe get referred to a little differently. And so you're going to have to get comfortable with that. And for a system like us, audio, AV guys know what good audio sounds like, right? So they should be able to come in and make sure that a system sounds like what it needs to sound like and get it installed. And it's being run with the same kind of connectors they're using in the AV space. So I think there's a ton of familiarity there. I think more people are afraid of the concept, or they see premier brands. And just like in AV, there's a couple of big name manufacturers and the security side, and they go, oh, that looks really intimidating. There's a lot. And I know there's some big people selling that. You might not start off selling it, but to the point made earlier, you don't need to. There's a lot of installs that don't need that premium brand that are going to price you out if you had that. So I think they have a lot of skill and understanding of how customers work. And if they're starting with somebody that they're already working with, then it's a natural conversation to say, hey guys, let's work together to come up with a solution, and then partner with somebody that has the skill to guide them to make sure that they work within the rules and confines of the area they're in.
Yeah, thank you. That was pretty thorough answers. Cynthia, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or do you just concur?
I concur. I think people get scared when they think of security because of licensing, and it really is a misnomer. I mean, there's, yes, components of the security industry that do have licensing and code requirements because life safety. There's an awful lot of products and technology that reside within the security space that, again, are natural, add-ons to the AV space. Thanks.
And Sean, I'll frame this a little bit differently for you. we've talked about what the integrators know. In your experience, what do those cyber or IT people not know, where the AV person is going to bring some value to the table?
I think they're pretty aware of what the technology does, and I think that's one of the things that those in the AV space, just understanding the technology and the basics behind it. Michael alluded to a lot of that. Just basic technologies, like you'll find a lot of manufacturers that offer certifications in their particular product or brand, and they all start about the same, which is understanding how to get it onto the network and understanding that technology first. So that's probably the biggest hurdle in just being able to talk to the IT folks within their verbiage, let's call it, right? Making sure that things land off. You're not. I think that's one of the really cool things about the physical security space is that we have a bit of a unified. You mentioned the interoperability a little bit earlier in this conversation, and that's one thing that the physical security space has really done well in making a lot of their devices ONVIF compliant, right? Which is a set of functions that are interoperable between manufacturers. So the physical security space does that really well, and they've worked really hard at it for the last couple of years.
Right, and that may not be entirely well known to people. You know, interoperability is a constant topic, so it's reassuring to know that that's already been under the hood in the physical security space. I just want to change gears for a second, and in talking to you guys before this, you all mentioned some of the more sort of sophisticated situations that you'd found yourself in with security situations. So we've talked about the entry-level side of it, but can you share about some of the more advanced capabilities that are going on right now? Michael, did you want to take that? I know you mentioned that a couple of your systems had been present in situations where tragedy was averted at schools, and I know you can't give a lot of detail, but are you able to talk about any of the more sophisticated systems you've been involved with?
Well, sure. I mean, so we do a lot of stuff in K-12, higher education, industrial environments, all of that kind of thing. And what I think you're referencing. So certainly, from a school system, we all grew up in schools, and we're used to bell and PA systems and announcements and bells and all that kind of stuff. And we can function as that system, but there's an elevated portion to what we do where if something does happen that is horrific, like a shooting or something like that, there's a different level of scenario that happens and a different level of communication, right? So first responders are called, communication happens through the PSAP. We do notification throughout the entire facility. We tell people all the time. And I mentioned this to you earlier. I taught for 8 years. I was a band director. I never actually heard an announcement in 8 years. I was either in a rehearsal inside the building or on a practice field outside the building. And so I wouldn't have known. And I challenge anybody to find a cheaper medium than audio to actually cover every square inch of a campus, right? So it's a way of getting communication out to everyone. And obviously, when I taught, because I've been in AV for a long time, we didn't have quite the problems that we had, today with school violence. But in at least 2 situations that we're aware of, our systems have been in schools when a shooting has happened. And in both of those cases, the systems have worked as they were designed to. And in both of those cases, the shooter was the only person that received that got shot. To be candid, in both cases they were taken down by the security officer on the campus. And look, it would be unfair for us to say that, okay, well, we saved everybody. The reality is the students were trained like they were supposed to be. The teachers were trained like they were supposed to be. They drilled and practiced like they were supposed to. The security officer did the right thing. There's so many variables that goes in to a situation like that into making sure that everybody's safe. It makes us feel good that we were part of the solution, right? And that our products make a difference. And look, I will tell you candidly, you go to sleep differently at night when you realize what the risk is of your system not working versus a conference call not going off. I mean, you do, but but yeah. So we can certainly function at an everyday level in all the applications we go into. In an industrial environment, great. We're telling people when shift changes are happening and when equipment needs to be cleaned. But we have scenarios where disgruntled workers come in and, taking an aggressive action against their boss, and the owners were scared because no one in the building heard the shot because everyone had protective hearing on because industrial manufacturing is loud. And so they were like, we need visual and much louder audio notification systems. And so we can come in and do the basic level stuff, but certainly, our systems can function at that higher level, and they're designed to, right? That's a big part of what we do, is create that visual and audio notification.
Right, sure. That ties into what Cynthia said earlier about digital signage even being part of a platform for security that people may not realize. Cynthia, did you want to add anything from one of the more sophisticated situations you found yourself in?
So I think also higher ed applications, and again, unfortunately, where we're seeing such a rise in some of the gun violence and sort of mass shootings. But interesting, we worked with a customer that did a signage deployment across campus, and really some of the neat benefits was it was there obviously to help provide guidance and do general notifications, etc. Just as Michael was alluding to on the audio side. But it also gave an opportunity if there was to be an incident on campus that could actually go into specific buildings and talk to those specific either classrooms or facilities and say, listen, stay in the building, to not disrupt anything else that was going on in particular space, provide specific directions, really become customized, and then also provide updates following that, like, shooter, whomever else has been apprehended, all is good, move on. But a really interesting case that they took it one step further. They had kiosks throughout the campus. And on those kiosks, it gave also safe places. So I know if they had someplace they needed to go, they needed a safe haven, someplace that they could get into that wasn't locked down, typically with a either swipe card or access control card, that they'd be able to get into in case of an emergency. So that was really insightful as well.
Yes, that definitely sounds like it. So as you're talking, I'm thinking of something I wanted to ask Sean, which is that if someone is bringing security to an existing platform, like we heard Cynthia talk about digital signage, that was then kind of upgraded to security, how often do you see the opportunity being as an extension of what an integrator may already be specifying, or do people come into this specifically to solve security problems? In other words, are they an upsell sometimes, or are they purpose-built, these systems?
A lot of the times it is since you were here. So a lot of the AV and IT folks are already doing something on site, and they go, well, while you're here, hey, can you put this camera up for us? Or we would like an intercom that's installed at the back loading dock door so that we know when somebody's back there. And then they come to us at TD SYNNEX and ask, okay, so where do I get started? And our field services and pre-sales design teams are there to help them pick that right product. But I want to kind of quickly go back to what Michael was saying about some of these complex scenes in scenarios, which are the ability for our technology. I think we're in a bit of a technology revolution right now in the physical security space, and with the layered approach that's happening in the industry, some of those things for the audio side, right, that Michael had mentioned, not being able to hear, but relying on some of the AI and the high-powered computing that's able to detect things before they even actually happen to send that notification out, is quite astonishing right now in this particular field.
That was very interesting to me too. I think we talked about how, there's audio detection for threats, sounds that could be, categorized as a threat, that can go on before anyone's really aware of what's going on. So with that type of upgrade to a system, we've talked about how if the person comes to you with the question, hey, while you're here, but is there a way that integrators can be more proactive and go directly to a customer? Is there something they can do when they're doing an RFP, where they maybe even add a section to their RFP where they mention that they're available for security needs or things like that? Do you have any advice for integrators who want to initiate the conversation, not just respond to it? So, Michael, do you want to take that?
Yeah, educate yourself before you commit. I mean, that's, the idea of responding to an RFP, if you don't have some understanding of what you actually have the capability to do, that's dangerous to me. Just because you need to understand what you're committing to, right? So I think if it's something, I cannot agree more with the example of, hey, since you're here, could you guys do this as well? We hear that all the time. Right. And that is, it's the old necessity is the mother of invention, right? We evolved because the customer asked us to, right? And we hear it again, both directions of why security people do audio. It's because they were putting cameras in and they said, hey, by the way, we want to put some speakers in here because we want to play some music for background music. Can you do it? It happens both directions, right? So I agree with that. And in most cases, those are pretty low risk situations. But again, still, there's a point of education that probably needs to happen. If you're responding to something big enough that's got an RFP, I would highly recommend that you have already made the point of getting educated, understanding what you felt comfortable offering and what your capabilities were, and if license is required and whether or not you have that before I would respond. But I think the first example is probably the absolute most common is you're already here. Can you help us do this? And that becomes the introduction into, hey, wow, look at this whole other world that looks just like us, but I don't do any of it. And that opens the door for more people than I could count.
Sure, like Cynthia said about the crawl first. So Cynthia, is there something you wanted to add to that, how an integrator can be, proactive in talking to their customers, maybe just about low-hanging fruit needs, not anything too sophisticated?
So I think that the toughest part about talking about a technology or product that you don't know is where do you start, right? I think Sean said earlier, you don't know what you don't know, and walking into a situation where you don't even know what answers, what are questions to ask to kind of qualify the opportunity is really difficult. And we, we certainly have, playbooks and, 101 training and applications and questionnaires that you can use just to help qualify the opportunity. You're not making a commitment to the customer. You're just kind of understanding what the opportunity is, what it looks like, and then leveraging resources behind you to have that conversation. Hey, I was talking to this customer. I asked them these 5 questions. This is what they came back to us with. Would you recommend that? Are we qualified for this? What training would I need to do to, be qualified for this? What resources are available? But certainly there's, again, from supplier partners to industry resources to, local, training classes, et cetera. There's a world of opportunity from an education perspective that's out there. But again, start basic, sort of educate yourself before you walk in there. But again, we do have some, playbooks and some guidelines that we can offer up to help you feel more comfortable having that conversation with your customer as opposed to going into it blindly. But I think you might
like
that person that says, hey, can you hang these cameras for me, right? That should spark a kind of fire in your belly to go back to the office and say, I had this customer asking me about cameras. What can we do? What are our resources to learn more about this? I mean, a basic question could be, what brand are you using? Let me get back to you. This is not where we specialize in, but would love to support you in this moving forward. That's a great, to me, opportunity to open the door to drive into security space.
I love the idea of a questionnaire. That is really kind of an interesting tool to bring to the table. So Sean, over on your end, you definitely set the scene with the you're there and you're asked, but do you also have ways that you encourage your partners to be proactive about this? And if so, in what area?
Absolutely. So start with what you're kind of comfortable with. The physical security space has got a lot of, I'm going to call them add-on kind of features, right? So to Michael's point, which is the audio side. So a lot of connections in the interoperability between like IP speakers and connecting a camera right through a single pane of glass that sends out a message, right? Maybe it's after hours. Hey, you're on video recorded cameras, right? Leave the premise, the business is closed, whatever, right? So that pre-recorded message that goes along with the audio side. That's what they're comfortable with. The intercoms, if you're in the telephony side, so a lot of the intercoms are SIP compliant. So you're already doing telephone works and voicemails and voice over IP, stuff like that. Those are still physical security that kind of gets you into the access control side of things. So I take a very personal approach to this because I love technology as a whole. And I'll sit down with anybody that and have that conversation with them and find the right solution for their customers. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward conversation. And as Cynthia said, we too have a questionnaire that our design engineers kind of send out, the questions that you probably need to ask. What are we looking at? What are we going to secure? How are we going to do it? Is there access control that's associated with it? What are all the other kind of add-on features that go along with it? So you can get creative, right? So, I mean, the customers do. The end users end up getting very creative. And this is what I saw. This is what I saw in the movies. So that's one of those things that you kind of have to combat in this industry is CSI can do it. Why can't I? Well, you can for enough money.
That is a slice of real life right there. The way television impacts real life. So we didn't do a lot much with this yet, but the other thing I know about all of you is that you also have some good support for AV over IP and the security that goes with just having secure network endpoints and systems that are, operating to current encryption standards and things like that. So are there differences? I'll start actually with you, Sean. Are there differences for people who might be coming to you from a network security standpoint, worried about cloud or any kind of just more overall network security, that they want to be at the table with the IT people and being more knowledgeable?
So from a cybersecurity, I think that's a lot of the industry is kind of split right now for that direct to cloud. It's convenient, but security, I think the cybersecurity side of it, I think plays a big portion of that as well. Is some do it better than others. I'll just leave it at that. Some manufacturers do it better than others.
And obviously, as a distributor, you're aware of where there are strengths and weaknesses in that area. Did anyone, I know ADI has an excellent resource about AV over IP security. Cynthia, are the resources that are shared with physical security issues the same as those that are network security if people come to you at ADI?
Definitely a lot of similarities and a lot of, again, the same ways to help prevent cyber attacks. And again, it's as basic when you think about just network security, cyber security. It starts with people. Educating your teams around best practices to address network security. I think it would go the same way. I wouldn't give my passcode to my security system out to all my neighbors, nor would I give my passcode out, regards to my network or anything else. So I think it starts with just basic education. Understanding where you're vulnerable in your network is really important as well, whether it's in the security space or the AV space. What are the endpoints, identifying those, who has access, and how to prevent some of those breaches can be very basic. And there's obviously a lot more complex things that are layered on by security. And again, on the security side, as I mentioned earlier, just doing regular security updates, password changes, etc. Again, it applies to both sides of the business.
Yes, so much of it is user education. Obviously all of us work for companies where we know that the weakest link is usually not technology. So, Michael, how have you seen the Atlas products change in response to making sure the endpoints are secure and can be confidently used on an IT network?
Yeah, there's evolution that we've made inside the product at the firmware level to try to protect. And then the solution we sell is actually a hybrid cloud solution. So as Sean mentioned, we're still in a hybrid cloud model because it gives that IT people that local resource or local device on site, but then cloud gives us the scalability, to tease something. And if you want to learn more about it, come see us at ISE West because we got a pretty big announcement there. But Sean was talking about some of the AI stuff and visual detection and that kind of thing. The thing that I see is that the technology world, or the security world, I'm sorry, continues to evolve really with two different drivers, and one forces the other, right? Technology continues to evolve very quickly, and the adoption of AI and security has been really aggressive and really quick. And it's kind of went from not a lot was there to all of a sudden everybody had something that had AI in it. And it's moved quick because there's a need, right? And there's a desperate need. Sean mentioned earlier, a lot of people have video cameras recording, but nobody's watching them. And so that's not a proactive tool, that's a reactive tool at that point. So how are you going to actually use somebody doing something in a parking lot that's, potentially dangerous for the people in the building as a notification? Well, you're going to have to put something that's monitoring that all the time. And we've learned through experience that people are not good at that, right? They get tired and all that. So AI plays a really valuable tool, a really valuable role. So in order to meet the other driver in security, which is legislation, right? And people don't think about that. We don't get conference rooms and meeting rooms and classrooms legislated necessarily on the AV side, but it is something that's different. A simple example is Alyssa's law in K-12, right? It's a law that was started in Florida as a result of the event at Parkland. It moved up to New Jersey and New York. Texas has adopted it. A number of states are looking at it. It's on the federal floor now being looked at as well as at a potentially national level. But the law in Texas is only 2 sentences. So lots of room for interpretation, lots of room for understanding. And so technology has to build a solution to try to meet that need, to make sure that their customers are taken care of. And so both things drive security development as a part of it. It's just a given today. If we don't build a solution that is going to be safe on the network, then we're not going to sell it because no IT director is going to be willing to take it.
Allow it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're our customer, right? They are the gate. They are a major gatekeeper in the process. So we have to be compatible.
So I'm watching the clock here and thinking that we're going to, I don't know if we get automatically cut off or if, so just in case we do, thank you for everyone for being here. I see a question. I definitely, at least one that I want to take out of the Q&A. We'll take that really quickly. And, but I will say thank you in advance in case there's a hard clock on this session. So the question that I see here coming in from the audience is, what is the easiest type of installation to cross over on if you want to sort of expand into that security opportunity? And Cynthia, I'm going to kick that one to you.
Boy, I think that's a broad question, but I would say, I'll support my friend Michael here. I think, AV is a great opportunity. I mean, it's just the crossover in terms of the applications. It's everywhere. It can be used, for both, purposes for entertainment, et cetera, but also for security purposes. The network, as well, and networking, I think, is a big area of crossover and how you kind of get into the space, if that makes sense. But that's a big question, and there's a lot of different areas. I will just do want to say something to add on to what Michael said around technology. When you think about even in AI, et cetera, facial recognition, facial detection, and the application that cameras bring to that into the AV space is also really interesting when you think about, anything, the application in QSR or retail environments where they're looking at you and they're advertising to you, but there's also a security element to that as well. So again, there's just so much crossover. That's a big question.
Yeah, it's very broad, but at least it shows that people are aware of the opportunity. The last thing I'm going to ask everybody as we come up to the end is that Infocom is not that far away. Obviously, Michael, you would encourage people to come to the Atlas IED desk, but if you could advise someone the one thing to do at Infocom if they're curious about this opportunity, what would you advise? Are there, seek out classes, come to certain booths? Just maybe a little idea for people at the trade show. I'll start with you, Michael.
Come by and see us.
Yeah. So everyone's going to be there, right?
Yeah, go see these folks. Go see these folks. They've got great teams. They've got great organizations. They're used to doing this. They're doing this every day. Step into a world that you're maybe a little uncomfortable with and ask some questions and try to get more comfortable. Take a little bit of time to do that. Come see us at the Atlas booth, certainly. If you really want a wild, mind-blowing experience, come to Vegas in 2 weeks to ISC West and go walk that show floor. It's really eye-opening. And if you can get past just the lack of familiarity, you will see opportunity everywhere.
You're all going to be there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
At ISC and Infocom. Cynthia, I don't want to talk over people, so if you could just, Cynthia, take an opportunity to say what shows you'll be at and how people find ADI.
Sure. I mean, we'll be at ISC. We'll be at Infocom. So again, don't wait until Infocom, but you can certainly leverage our websites. We host expos across the country every week. Actually, we just kicked off our first series of expos on March 19th in Toronto, and we'll continue throughout the year. But that's a great opportunity for anyone on this call to attend and to meet with security professionals, see security technology, engage with our field SMEs as well. And again, you don't have to spend a lot of money. We'll feed you lunch and so forth, but you can also sit in on trains and education and talk to consumers. To our supplier partners. Our next expo is coming up in Detroit on the 25th of April. So encourage folks if you're in the Detroit area, not just because it's my hometown, but also because it is our next expo. But please, it's on our website. Feel free to browse that.
Okay, and Sean, over to you for next steps.
Absolutely. So to the events category, we have all the major events, ISC West and Infocom, ISC East, all those major trade shows that happen, but also our internal shows. Right now, coming up on the 1st of April is Red, White, and U that we host for specifically around public sector, which is your state, local, and law enforcement, SLED, education, healthcare, those types of avenues. That's a show dedicated just to those particular verticals. But even more so, we talked a lot about cybersecurity. We've got one in Boston, Massachusetts that comes up in May. It's like May 20th through the 23rd, which is called Beyond Security. So it's hosted by our CyberSolve business group. And it talks all about network security. So if that's something that you guys want to get into and kind of get your feet wet there first and head on over to physical security, we've got those resources as well.
Okay, that's good. That's a lot of opportunity to get going. So we've come up against the top of the hour. And you guys have been really generous with your time, and both the speakers and the audience. I really just personally appreciate the effort that everyone puts into this particular area of the industry. And I thank you all for coming today, and I thank you for your time to present. I believe we go back to Scott for the gift card.
Yep, that's right. And thanks, Cynthia. Great discussion. with Cynthia and Sean and Michael. That was fantastic. Okay, so the last piece of business is the Amazon gift card prize drawing, and the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card is Kyle Van from Missouri. So congratulations to Kyle. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Sound and Video Contractor team, I want to thank ADI, Atlas IED, and TD SYNNEX for participating in this important discussion about an emerging opportunity. And thanks to all of you for attending. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.